one of us right now. So right now, let's call out those beautiful qualities of spirit that we want to experience here tonight.
Empathy,
Joy,
connection,
letting go,
harmony.
And knowing this and so much more will be experienced here tonight. We are so grateful, and let's have fun!
And while everyone's returning to the seat, if we can give Stephanie Bennett a big hand. She's going to be playing hard for us. Give her a big hand. She's wonderful and beautiful. So, thank you so much.
Okay, this message comes on behalf from Jennifer Hoffman. We're into another month, and this one will be focused on cleaning up after the chaos of January. Remember that chaos is the result of disintegration of old paradigms, and we're seeing a lot of that now. The energy focus for February is connection, and the other 5D energies of collaboration, community, and creativity, which is also the theme of 2019. This can be a great month if we don't get lost in confusion, self-doubt, and forgetting that we are masters of our own universe and energetically sovereign. February's new moon is another one in a series that began in November 2018, where all of the new moons are at 0 degrees of their sign, which continues through April. The number 0 does not mean nothing. It is pure potential and means no thing. Energy waiting for an intention to bring it to form. Energy looking for an energy container to fill. So see each new moon period until May as being pure potential, starting fresh and new. This new moon is in the sign of Aquarius, ruling community, friends, social groups, and connections. Okay. Something else to read. This comes from Basha. Welcome, friends and family. The message for tonight is peace and harmony. With Chiron in Pisces, healing will take place with maximum speed. For those of you who wish to be slowed down, try breathing in the peace of yesteryear with abundant jubilance. Peace and harmony are warranted at this time of turmoil and trauma. Calmness is of the utmost import as the days wane into darkness of another sort. Healing the heart is of the utmost importance, for with a healthy heart one may pass the rite of transition. Frank, by the way, that's for you. Open your heart, expand your being, and encompass all those around you with love and divine right action. Know that turmoil that surrounds you is there for your use, to heal, to grow, to expand in the world of matter. Allow it to be, and so it is. Okay, I have one more thing to read. I'm reading it as a poem, but it's a song, and many of you will remember it, and it's Let There Be Peace on Earth by Jill Jackson Miller and Simon. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With Mother, Father, God, brothers and sisters, all are we. Let me walk with my brother and sister in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow, to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
Can we sing that?
Go ahead.
Can we sing that now?
Sing it.
There we go.
Peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
And it's because I knew that I would see all of you tonight. So thank you for coming, thank you for joining, thank you for participating in the song, because peace begins. Where?
With me.
We ask that you take a moment and turn off your cell phones. Thank you so much. Please turn them all the way off, because even when they're on vibrate, they still have a tendency to distract while we're meditating. We begin our full moon meditation this evening with an invocation. Great Father, Mother, God, and Goddess, be with us here now. Hold this space sacred from which we may do our work. Open our hearts to your golden light, that we may radiate love into the hearts of all. Open our minds to your divine knowing, that we may radiate understanding into the minds of all. Open our hearts to your infinite presence, that we may radiate awareness into the spirits of all. One heart, one mind, one spirit, unlimited and indivisible. Be still and I am God. Acknowledging that spirit is one and the paths to God are many. In our opening ritual, we will honor the world's religions and the many names of God with a quote from each religion on the topic of love. A bell will be rung and a candle lit as the name of divinity is sounded for each of the major religions of the world, after which we will sound the Om. Om is an ancient sacred tone, a deepening. Sounding the Om allows an intoning of grace, balance, and empowerment. There is no right or wrong way. Simply relax into your own tone, open to the nuances of this sacred sound as it moves through you. Our opening ritual will conclude with all of us sounding the Om several times, each on your own note, in your own time, and a continuing free-form rhythm, creating a tapestry of healing sound. We honor all religions as expressions of the one God, Great Spirit, Divine Essence. May the wellspring of love find in us an unimpeded channel. In the sacred tradition of Taoism, the Tao, Spirit arms us with love. In the sacred tradition of Hinduism, Ishvara, Shivu, Ishvara, Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, one worships the Lord through love. Lord Buddha, cultivate a heart of love. In the tradition of the sacred feminine, the goddess in all her forms, the divine mother loves, nurtures, and sustains all. In the sacred tradition of Judaism, Adonai Elohim, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and your neighbor as yourself. In the sacred tradition of Christianity, God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, God is love. In the sacred tradition of First Nations people of all lands, love is the medicine that holds all life together. In the sacred tradition of Islam, Allah, this is love, to fly toward a secret sky, to cause 100 veils to fall each moment. In the sacred tradition of all other religions, you may now add additional names of divinity that you would like to invoke. Let us now uncross our legs and close our eyes if they are not closed already. Take a long and deep breath in and out, and in and out. And as you take another long and deep breath, relax and let go of the day. Let go of the people, the challenges, and just be. When you are ready, put your feeling attention into your heart center and relax. Imagine a bright, warm sun floating above your head. Its rays are emanating down into the crown of your head. The sun is releasing a pure white light. This light is floating down, filling your head, your neck. It floats across your shoulders, down your arms and out your hands. It fills your torso. Your purifying light of the sun. As the sunlight continues to float down your body through your legs and out the bottom of your feet, it washes away all impurities, all imperfections, all pain and dis-ease deep into the central core of the earth. Your body is filled with divine energy. And right now, you are whole, perfect, and complete. As the light continues to energize, pulsate, and vibrate, allow it to expand out through your auric field. It fills the first layer, and next, the second layer, and on the third and the fourth layers about you. And as you continue to feel the perfection of your light body, allow it to expand and fill this room with divine essence. Continue to expand your awareness and divine essence out of the onion, and imagine and intend that you are now permeating all of Los Angeles with this pure divine essence. Expand your awareness to all of California, all of the United States, and now allow it to float out across the globe, enveloping Mother Earth and all of her beings with the pure divine essence. The white light of perfection is now vibrating and pulsating, connecting all the beings on the planet who gather with conscious intent to heal, balance, harmonize, and now unify the islands of light. We have now set the vibrational tone for this ceremony. Slowly and gently, bring your awareness back to this room. As you take a deep breath, bring it back to the present time. We'll take another deep breath, and when you're ready, open your eyes.
Are we alive, alert, awake, and aware? Yes. Good. Come on, all. Let's stand up now and do the Om Shanti. For anyone who's new this evening, we started kind of slow, and then we get it a little faster and a little faster till we're just like jumping for joy on the Om Shanti. And if you know a different part with me, please feel free to sing with me tonight. Let there be peace in my mind. Let there be peace in the earth. Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Shanti, Om. 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 Om Shanti, Om. Peace within my mind. Peace within my mind. God and only God is moving me. Peace within my mind. God and only God I live to see. Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Shanti, Om. Om Shanti, Om. Peace within the earth. Peace within the earth. God and only God is moving me. Peace within the earth. God and only God I live to see. Peace within the earth. God and only God is moving me. Peace within the earth. God and only God I wish to see. Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Shanti, Om. 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 Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti.
Beautiful Krystal Rains is here tonight. She is an artist, a herbalist, a healer. You didn't say Ked.
Sorry, we forgot that.
Ked Trad Craft Witchcraft and shamanic practitioner. An active member of the Greater Los Angeles Pagan, the Green Man, Pacific Circle Revival Campout, and our own spiritual unity movement communities. Her primary focus is on healing ancestral legacy trauma using Karo shamanism, Reiki, and other modalities she has learned on her path for her own ancestral healing and sharing it with others. Tonight, join Krystal's self-guided path focused on healing ancestral trauma, composed of a kaleidoscope of tools and experiences. Learn how she weaves these practices and wisdom gained into solutions to heal ourselves as a way to help our own ancestors and community. Also, as an added gift, Krystal has a raffle for one free remote ancestral healing session. Please put your name on the pink slips that are on the table as you leave and put it in the bucket, and she will contact you via email and post it on Facebook. So we're in for a treat, it sounds like tonight. Because she's going to do her talk and then Stephanie's going to play again, I want to tell you about Stephanie right now. Stephanie Bennett, our guest musician, is a harpist, a composer, an arranger, a recording artist, and teacher. She has performed, arranged, and recorded with a wide variety of musical stars and on many albums and soundtracks, and in TV and film. Talented in a wide range of styles from classical and Celtic to pop and jazz, she has performed for communities and leaders around the world. The Hollywood Reporter has called her one of our country's top harpists. She composes, arranges, and records her own music, and she has some of her albums available here this evening for $5 to $12, and more are available to download from her website. The CDs are right behind me. She is local to the San Fernando Valley and has taught all styles of harp to both beginners and established harpists who would like to expand their musical repertoire for over 30 years. Her extensive biography, as well as contact information for events or lessons, is available on harpworld.com. So without further ado, I want to bring up Krystal Rains, who will be followed by the beautiful Stephanie Bennett. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna play. Normally my voice
carries well enough that I don't need a mic, but we're gonna work on using the mic so that it doesn't get lost in the acoustics of this room. So the primary title for this is Love is All You Need, and as I reflected on that, because it wasn't exactly the title of what I proposed, I realized that not only is love all you need, love is what you gain. It's what I've gained in doing this work. Don't need to cry before I even start. My name is Krystal Rains, as you said, and thank you for joining me this evening. I'm blessed that you wish to share my healing journey. I'm here to share my own experiences and how I've used them to focus on ancestral trauma healing. I hope to inspire you to use your own healing gifts in this manner, and also share a few that you might not know. And sometimes that's just the awareness of knowing how to focus on this and make a difference. Like many of us, I have a lot of trauma in my life, literally starting from pre-birth trauma, attention and behavioral issues, because I'm recovering from childhood lead and arsenic poisoning. I was in a traumatic car accident at 3, a home fire at 10, acrimonious childhood divorce, abusive stepmother, childhood emotional neglect, and anxiety. I just bring those up because those are just a few things that I have that many other people have, those and more. And it might excuse the emotional brick wall that I had between myself and my ancestors that I had built. It's not surprising if any of you would have similar stories or even more trauma in a world that's created by traumatized generations upon traumatized generations. For clarity, I define ancestors as any bloodline relative, those who we know and those beyond our lifetime. Ancestors are also our descendants, which include distant members of our family tree and those we are connected to via marriage, adoption, spiritual practice, or other close emotional ties. My journey on this path began during a class with the Green Man, envisioned to the west, down into a cave to receive a gift from our ancestors. You can imagine how well I was in for that treat anyway. When I got down there, I was led to a treasure chest, and when I opened it, it was filled with betrayal. It was betrayal on both sides of my family. And I was like, yeah, that was exactly the kind of gift I expected from my family. So, as I thought about how I'd been betrayed by my family, I also reflected on how people in my life might have felt betrayed by me. Betrayal perpetrates betrayal. Betrayed is often the betrayer. Creating just a small toehold into a connection with my ancestors and a way to break that brick wall. If I didn't do that, I wasn't going to be able to go much farther. I next found myself in a class with Orion Foxwood on ancestral connections, and I asked that question. You know, the kind of questions you already know the answer to and you don't want to hear it. I said, so if you've got unfinished business with somebody who's passed, what do you do about it? And he laughed as they introduced me as a witch. He said, you're the witch, you deal with it. And then that was literally when I started even being aware of that. It was only earlier this, in doing these talks, I started doing these talks last September. And as I did the talks, I realized that in the 6 or 7 years I've been doing this work, I actually had never done the work that I was referring to in that. That was with my father, who died at 57, about 14 years ago. And just before Samhain, which is Halloween for many people, I did do specific work that was for my father this year, and it's made a huge difference. So we did a ritual that night. I had a personal consultation with Orion, and he gifted me with a meditative practice that we'll do during the meditation later, called the River of Blood. I'll talk more about that with details before we do that meditation. Karo Shamanic Healing was the next gift that I got. That is my mesa below. It's a bag of rocks with a birth name of Krystal. You can imagine how well that connected with me. During a ritual, there was a discordant rattling for 45 minutes. Literally, I was watching the clock trying to crawl out of my skin. because it was so disturbing, it led me to doing some soul retrieval work with the woman who was centering that ritual and who eventually became my teacher, Gianna Ciccelli at the Green Man, who's no longer there, but I've also worked with her teacher, and I've hosted her teacher's teacher. Pardon me, I meant to get it. This would happen, and I forgot this. I was blessed to, with my significant other and I, to host Esther's teacher from Peru, and that's Jorge Delgado. Doing that soul retrieval brought some 3 different points of trauma in my life, connected and pulled that out. Carol really works at the root of things. Often when you try to heal certain things, the pattern doesn't change. Carol, one of the archetypes is Jaguar, and he helps you literally track down the source and pull it out by the root. That's become even more manifest in some of the work I've done recently, where I can literally feel how much I'm pulling and how far back. One of the things about this, though, is that the Carol practice is from South America. It's from the mountainous regions between Peru and Ecuador. You know, indigenous people don't really like boundaries and borders. Often when I talk about Peruvian shamanic work, people talk about ayahuasca. That actually is from the jungles. Nothing wrong, that's a beautiful spirit energy. It's just not what I'm called to. It's more the rocks and mountains of the range. But it was, in this day and age of cultural appropriation, I had to really focus and think about what I was doing with this work. But I put some pieces together. A number of years ago, before that shamanic ritual, I was honored to set memorial space for a friend who had passed away at a very young age and had not been found for several days. We did a memorial in Griffith Park and helped his spirit cross. And I later found out that his absentee father, a little difficulty with some ancestral connections, was Ecuadorian. And I get chills every time I share it with people. I know this is a gift from his ancestors to help me connect with mine. And because of that, I have it. It's gratitude from them, and it's gratitude back in reciprocal nature from me. So I use it to the best of my abilities to help others. I've used this very healing practice on myself at that time for more than a year. Using rocks from the mesa, I literally create a proxy me to do chakra healing. It's the same kind of work I do when I do remote healing for someone else. I'm pretty well versed in it since that's the way I do my own work. I did healing on all aspects of myself needing help: trauma, betrayal, physical pain, relationships, and more. To begin removing these lingering residual obstacles, I used some of the core beliefs of Carol: reciprocity, balance, and the ability to transmute negative energy into positive. My impetus to remove negativity from the world and increase positive has motivated my personal practice. While a gift of personal healing in my own time and at my own pace, by my own hand, has been empowering and healing in its own way. I've also had the opportunity to heal in a wide variety of ritual spaces. Once was in a Native American medicine wheel, and I believe the ancestors in that particular modality come from the South, and there was somebody holding that space for me, and when it was my turn, she was in tears. She said, they're crying, they want to know why you think they don't care. I'm pretty blunt. I said, do they want the long list or the short? That was a really interesting moment, because it was at that moment that that pressure released. You see, they've been trying to reach me, and the harder they reached, the bigger that wall was. I was not going to be pushed into anything. And they recognized at that moment that if we were going to work together, they were going to have to wait for me to reach them. And that really did make a difference. During that same work, I learned the additional practice of Ho'oponopono. I've been in this room where we've had somebody that specifically talked about that beautiful practice. For those who don't know or aren't aware of it, it's 4 simple phrases. I've realized that when I am unable to do any other healing work, this tool is something I could reach for, literally, to heal the resistance I have to doing the work. For those who don't know it, the 4 phrases are, I'm so sorry for, fill in the blank, please forgive me, I love you, and thank you. It is effective for personal work, especially in relationships with others, in use of, I'm so sorry for the hurt that I caused another today. It can be done on a global level, in something as, I'm so sorry for the continued trauma of slavery on the African diaspora today, or I am so sorry for the trauma of the incarceration of innocent children. Just a few of the things that we can talk about in our world today. As I continue using my tarot healing work on myself and close friends, I began to think about my younger sister who suffers from severe fibromyalgia, the kind that has the intense nerve pain. At the time, I didn't think that I would ever be given the ability to use energy healing on her, and while I know that some people believe you can send it to another higher self, I personally don't believe that, nor do I practice that. But that said, I realize that my sister and I have the exact same ancestors. We are full blood sisters. And I was literally in the middle of a healing work for myself, had my heart chakra open, when I was led to rearrange the stones and do my first ancestral healing with my Mesa. After that, I rearranged them back to the way I had my own and closed up my heart chakra and promptly freaked out. Went and had a conversation with my teacher. And she's told me that this practice literally is so grounded. There's nothing that Spirit's going to ask me to do that is going to be a problem. I continue to believe that the worst thing I can do is nothing, and I have seen and experienced healing in myself and others from the work that I've done. After the initial ancestral healing, I realized it was time to start unpacking that family treasure chest of betrayal, that gift I mentioned earlier in the talk. My healing sessions at that point were almost exclusively focused on the various patterns of betrayal wounds that I could think of, and the healing seemed to have a much wider net effect than on the ancestral line, sweeping up intergenerational trauma in mass rather than the one at a time as in the River of Blood healing work that works on individual ancestors. I jokingly refer to the one time I did a healing. It was to heal all the, send healing to all those who've been negatively affected by the betrayals of my ancestors. I didn't really think about how big that would be. I have intentionally done work that is 2,000 years old. And I know at this point I'm reaching beyond that, but my ancestral familiar that helps me do some of this work was a priestess for Boudica to the Mohegan when the Romans invaded Britain. One of the core things that I learned is that in another opportunity of a ritual, I got to heal an individual ancestor, and I found out that that betrayal treasure chest was something that was a decision she'd made. It was a decision she couldn't have made any other way, but it was a betrayal all the same. And she watched it perpetrate through the family lines. Being a little frustrated with people along the way that probably had the ability to do what I've done and chose not to. One of the things about that big, huge thing is I kind of promptly fell over and fell asleep. At that time, I was doing my work on my bed, so it worked really well. But one of the things this talks about is that healing work doesn't hurt me, but at the same time, it's made me very aware of self-care, which is a struggle when you have trauma. But I continue to work on improving my self-care, but I want to note that one of the most important self-care things I do beyond getting good sleep and eating healthy and getting exercise is to self-clear my chakras. I do that in the shower. It's something anyone can do. If you're not aware of the practice, it's open up your chakras, doing a counterclockwise circle, pull everything out in the running water, fill it up with light, and close them back up with a clockwise motion. I do that at least once a week when I do work on healing on someone, I usually do it before and after. One time I wasn't able to take a shower and I just ran the water in the sink. That was kind of an interesting thing because I've also done some water healing work with our drought. So it's only because it's been raining so much that I felt I could do that once or twice. But one of the things I want to say that self-care is a priority, not only to care for yourself during your work, but as a healing practice for your ancestors. You see, you are the embodiment of your ancestors in the here and now. So every time you do self-care, you're healing your ancestors. My next healing gift was received through my medical care at the VA, where they're using mindfulness and mindful self-compassion practices to help veterans and clinicians, headed by Dr. Greg Serpa and his staff. The programs are amazing, and they're working with PTSD, depression, anxiety, and chronic pain in veterans and the clinicians who have a high rate of burnout working with vets. I have witnessed the transformation of myself and fellow veterans in those 9-week programs. Within these practices, there's a formula for suffering. That is, pain, be it physical or emotional, times resistance equals suffering. You generally have little control over the actual pain, but using these practices, you can reduce the resistance to the pain and thereby reduce the suffering. Now, I didn't say pain plus resistance, I said pain times resistance. Right. So if you can reduce your resistance to the pain by even a little bit, you can reduce your suffering 10 to 40%. One of the other practices is leaning into difficult emotions, and it's been an important tool for dealing with ancestral trauma legacy. Literally, things like cognitive dissonance that we have trouble with when we're learning something new in social justice arenas. Distress tolerance practices in dialectic behavior therapy and exposures in cognitive behavior therapy have also been extremely helpful tools. When I am able to pay attention to things that I used to avoid or resist, then I have the awareness and power to make changes. This awareness and power is highly effective in many areas of my life, especially healing the ancestral trauma legacy. I have used many opportunities in my path to find keys or tools that would help me heal or overcome trauma. During a personal session with an energy healer, the practitioner made me aware that I was carrying trauma for another. In this case, it was sexual trauma, which I have not personally experienced, but have close friends and family who have. I left the session and reflected on this idea. You see, if I was carrying trauma for somebody, I'm expecting somebody was carrying trauma for me. For me, that was really easy. My sister carried my mother wound. So it would be pretty difficult to heal things if I wasn't carrying it. And I have a secondary session that is a retrieval and a release session. It's literally 2 sessions back to back. I charge a fee for a single session, and it's a fee and a half rather than 2 full fees because it's so important to do those 2 things together. At the time I created that double session, I pulled all my own trauma back to work with it, which I immediately followed with sending the trauma of others back to them with a prayer for healing and the tools to do so to resolve their own. It seemed ethical to bring my own trauma back first and then release what I held for others. Although that emotional weight is heavy, that's why it's so important to do that work back to back. The results of this particular practice have been interesting. You see, my sister found a therapist to deal with some of her sexual trauma, and I found a sense of peace with my mother issues that she'd held for me. Doesn't mean I have a great relationship, I'm just not quite as upset about it anymore. I've done work with friends, and one of them literally had another friend call them the next day and say, you know, I really ought to start dealing with my own issues. Shifts in family and other relationships are common effects. Finding and attending this exact spiritual unity movement event has been beneficial for me in several ways. You see, first, the second time I came, a very well-respected healer here recognized me as a healer. It was at a moment when I didn't quite know my path, and there was no question about it after I was told. I'm also aware that this gift comes with the responsibility to use it wisely and employ self-care. You see, in most environments, I put out more energy than I receive. I've learned here that it doesn't matter how much healing I push out. This reciprocity in this room leaves my battery recharged, so I don't miss it lightly. It has also taught me how to be more reciprocal with my energy in other spaces, and so I'm able to go out and do healing work in ways that I didn't think was possible originally. I call it osmosis. It's not only recharging, but it's so empowering. When I had the opportunity to become Reiki attuned, I'd already been doing this work. I specifically asked the Reiki guides to amplify and inform my ancestral trauma healing practice. While I can help you with a headache, it's not really what I do. My Reiki is focused or tuned for the ancestral healing I'm called to do. That's located in the third etheric field for people who are aware of those things, and I naturally plug into that, literally in class. The spirit guides told me, now ask the teacher what etheric field you were in, and we looked at it, and he said, you're in the third, and I've learned since that I'll be in an energy healer circle, and everybody else is like hands-on, and I'm up here like I'm playing the piano or something. But it's just my natural inclination. Healing works on ancestral lines appears like ripples on the water. You don't know how far those ripples will go or who they will affect. In extended family, specifically cousins, I've seen changes in their life that my work might have had some positive effect on their lives. Maybe I got rid of a barrier or something, and I've seen more positive things come into their lives. And it wasn't that I'm gonna take responsibility, there was just kind of a nod from spirit. So there are current research studies validating the concepts of generational trauma, finding damage in the DNA strands and telomeres. Interestingly enough, there are also studies about the healing effects of meditation practices on those same stress telomeres. I believe the damage is real, and I know the healing is real too. I'm a Western herbalist, and online someone made the suggestion to decolonize your herbalism. Decolonize is a term used recently in our search for ways to change systemic problems in our society, but to be honest, at the time I was confused about what they were suggesting. But one of the first suggestions somebody shared with me that I understood was to look into my own culture for herbs and practices that your own ancestors used. Putting this into practice, I've had some interesting outcomes. You see, within my ancestral legacy, I found two of my favorite and most commonly used and suggested herbs, nettle and hawthorn. Interestingly, in also researching for those herbs, I discovered a number of historical betrayals in my ancestral communities. Reclaiming the herbs of my ancestors is just one form of decolonizing on a very personal and unexpected journey. I believe that I was able to look into these paths because I'd done the healing work in myself and my ancestral legacy and was not resistant to accessing this information. That literally was, my family are Mennonite, also known as Anabaptists. Those were the heretics in Europe that were tortured and killed prior to the witch burnings in Europe. They were also exiled to Russia, and then when the revolution came, they knew they had to find their way to other places. Many went to Canada. There was actually a betrayal by a railroad engineer, not engineer, but a representative that betrayed them, that got them to Mountain Lake, Minnesota. I think it's important to stress that healing work is not absolving anyone of responsibility for their life choices, even an ancestor long past. But instead, this is a practice to clear the trauma residue, to resolve it. The traumatized traumatize others, the oppressor is as traumatized as well as the oppressed, perpetrating through generations, resulting in our damaged world. As a white woman, there's historical context to being dominated, as well as perpetrating the domination of others, strengthening the bonds of patriarchal domination in the world. I believe it's because of my healing work, I can recognize and admit those patterns. and that's the first step to making lasting changes. I often say that it's because of my beloved niece that I started paying attention to social justice. She's a multiracial young lady, and Sandra Bland's murder terrified me. But I also found a poem that reminded me that my ancestral trauma healing perhaps is the way that I can heal those family lines. We all carry some thread that's connected to the oppressed or the oppressor, and often it is both. Recognizing and sitting with that discomfort is a path to start the healing process, reducing the resistance to trauma, reducing the resistance to social change. While it may be difficult to recognize or accept, those who perpetrate domination are as wounded, or more so by the actions, as those who are dominated. See the bully on the playground, and you'll often find a wounded child who's being raised by a wounded child parent. I feel it is my responsibility to those affected to heal that which is within my power to heal, thereby reducing the resistance to social action and the suffering in our world. This poem is by Lisa Renee Hall, a beautiful Black woman who is a social justice advocate online. Dear descendants of the colonizers, no, you cannot push past the pain. This isn't a spin class. This is life. Pushing past the pain means that you ignore your humanity. Humans hurt and need to cry and need the time to process their wounds. Your ancestors had to push past the pain because they were doing harm to other humans. They extracted, eradicated, and erased the histories, stories, and heritage of those who were on these lands before their arrival. They brought more people with them and used violence to push their bodies to produce more than beyond what was normal, with no pay, with no compensation for the removal of their human rights. Here's an idea. Instead of pushing past the pain, sit with it. Write through what is coming up for you. Sit with the guilt and the shame. Feel it in your bones. Sit with the reality of what your ancestors did to other human beings in the quest to create a new home for themselves and for you. Cry if you have to. Vent if you must. Because the only way to bring healing to your body and bloodline is to acknowledge the pain of what your ancestors did, forgive them, and spend the rest of your life doing better by people of color. Invest in people of color, believe people of color, honor people of color. Damaged people, and until you see your own humanity, you'll never see the humanity in the descendants of the people your ancestors oppressed. With love from the descendants stolen from the kingdom of Anshanti, Lisa Renee Hall. I believe it is important to face the work needed in yourself and your own ancestral line. I'm talking about healing or resolving, not fixing. As you focus on the issues you bring to the world, you allow and empower others to focus on their own. It's easy to focus on the problems in others, other people, other communities, other countries. It's much more difficult to bring that focus into our own space. We see that when people are fearful and hateful of the other, but I believe it's just as damaging when we mean well or have good intentions, but are unaware of the trauma we are perpetuating. We can easily hide from our wounds by focusing our energy on fixing others, but people are wounded, not broken. Allowing them the space and tools to heal themselves is a very effective practice. Systems are broken, and when we heal ourselves, we can become more aware of systemic problems that have been perpetuated by our ancestors and find solutions. This is how it begins, within ourselves and our own family legacy. The pearl of wisdom I wish to share with you is there's no one modality to do this work. It's a matter of focusing on the need to do it and choosing an appropriate tool to help you heal in this manner and gain awareness of the legacy of trauma. Whatever modality works for you can make a difference. I'm going to step away because, do I have a couple more minutes? Or we're at the end? I thought so. So we're going to enjoy some music, and I will be back a little bit. allowing me to share my path and my gifts. I hope that you will be inspired to use your own to change the trauma in your own family legacy.
Thank you once again, Krystal and Stephanie. It's really beautiful. If you have your programs with you, would you pull them out right now? We're going to say the closing invocation together and kind of bring us back up. Father, Mother, God, and Goddess, thank you for the blessings we have received. Be with us now as we leave this sacred circle and go forth into our daily lives, taking the energy generated here tonight out into our homes, our work, the people we love, and all we touch. May we be your open channels into this world each day. We will be here next month. I'm not sure, what's the date of next month's? 20th of March?
It's Wednesday, March 20th.
Wednesday, March 20th, we'll be back. And we'll be bringing another beautiful ceremony, so plan to attend. And I think we've all had a beautiful night here. I think Krystal gave us some beautiful information. And don't forget, she has a raffle. If you want to get a free healing session from her, put your name in the basket. And there's CDs for... And put their email, put your email address on the pink slip along with your name. And there's CDs of Stephanie. I think she is amazing. I mean, it's amazing. I can hear it being on a film or a TV show. It's just so beautiful. So, and all the beautiful jewelry that's all over here. So stay and look around. So I'd like to ask Dina to come back up at this time, and we will have our closing ritual. Thank you so much.
Okay, so please join us in the closing ritual. And as we come to the close of our full moon ceremony this evening, let's take a moment, just a moment, to savor the centered focus of this healing energy that we've generated here together. So just do that, feel it. Own that. Take it home with you. Remember, as you let your own light shine, you simultaneously give other people permission to do the same. Clearly knowing yourself as an instrument of light, a being of spirit, you add one more grain of sand to the scales that hold the balance for our global future. Know that at a certain point, one grain of sand tips the scales, and you, in that very moment, this very moment, right here, right now, you are that grain of sand. Tip it. I would like to invite the candle lighters to come forward to form a circle once again. And if there's anyone here that needs healing, that would care or desire more attention, please join them. Let us embody the spiritual power that has been generated and received from the forces of light that guide this service. Let us focus that energy into the group center, and so now you can all join the center. And let's all take a deep breath. Allow it to rise up and pour this blessing out into our world, extending its positive healing effect throughout the awareness of humankind and the consciousness of our planet. We will together sound an extended free-form Om. As the sacred tone pours through you, feel yourself participating, drawing this healing love energy deeply into yourself and sending it out into your life, into our world. As we sound the Om, let us consciously extend our blessing to our planetary life, Mother Earth, including the animals, the trees, the air, and the water, as well as to all those who are in need of healing. And for those we would like to include in this healing circle, we speak their names together silently or audibly now. love, and intelligence. Let us send out this healing light energy to transform the consciousness of humankind. Oh.